the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am super excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Eric Severson. He is the Chief People and Belonging Officer at Neiman Marcus Group. Eric, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little about yourself, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Great. Well, it's an honor to be on your show, Christina. And I'm Eric Severson, Chief People and Belonging Officer at Neiman Marcus Group. I've been in this role for the last 2.5 years and previously was Chief People Officer at DaVita. And prior to that, co-Chief HR Officer at Gap Inc. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be a veterinarian when I grew up. And I grew up on a farm, taking care of animals, and it was my passion. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to intern at a vet's office in college one summer and learned that it actually wasn't what it looked like to me. It was really bloody and sad. In a lot of ways, we were putting people's animals to sleep and stuff. So I had a really fortunate opportunity to get a preview of the actual job and ended up pivoting into what I do now, and have found that my passion for taking care of others and helping them become better and grow extended really to people. And that's how I ended up in what's typically called human resources, but I call people services.
That's awesome. I love that answer. I always think it's interesting what people's dreams were when they were kind of younger as well. And I have a lot of questions around your day to day and the work that you're doing, taking care of people right now. But what would you say defines you as a person, Eric?
I always say when people ask, what do you want on your tombstone? I'd love for it to say this guy did something meaningful to help people find value and meaning in their work, because work is something that 95% of the people on the planet spend probably the largest portion of their life doing. It's where you channel your life force and your creativity, besides your children and other things. But it's a primary way people express themselves. And most people have deep emotional connection to their work. So I would like people to be able to say that I added value to the experience of people's work life. So the way that I've tried to do that is through my work, that in both creating value inside a company by helping it figure out the best way to lead and manage its people, I can hopefully create a virtuous cycle and also help all of those individuals learn things at the company that will help them be better in all parts of their lives. And that extends outward, right? More broadly and kind of ripples, if you will, into the community. So I always say that I would like everyone at Neiman Marcus, and I've said this at my previous companies as well, after they leave, to be able to say, I learned things about myself and about life at Neiman Marcus that make me a better parent, a better sibling, a better spouse, a better community member.
I absolutely love that. I think the stat is we spend at least a third of our lives working. So we might as well, we really want to find value in it, work with folks who also are inspiring and really supportive. And there's a ton of research out there that says if we feel that meaningful connection with our team and with the mission, the purpose of the work, then our end product is better. So it's a win-win flywheel effect for everyone. When we're talking about kind of, your role as a leader in people and belonging, we're talking about company culture too, which we know is dynamic because people are always changing. What are kind of the ways you think about qualitative and quantitatively measuring company culture at Neiman Marcus?
Love that you asked that question, because part of how I think about creating an extraordinary culture, it's combining the quantitative and the qualitative, and it's combining the heart in the mind. And so I am a long-standing, passionate, deep student of evidence-based management, and in particular, evidence-based people management. And evidence-based people management is an outgrowth of what started at medicine as evidence-based medical and behavioral health care, where you test different approaches to solving a problem like infection control in medicine, and you find what works best, then you figure out how to scale it throughout the system and teach it to as many people as possible. For a long time, talent management has been done in organizations based on preference and very little evidence. And more recently, there's been a very strong movement to take ideas that have been proven academically and through research studies and apply them and scale them. So I've been doing this, experimenting with this in companies over the last 20 years. And so at Neiman's, the way that we get at this is severalfold. I think one, in terms of measurement, we choose measures that are predictive of the outcomes we want, of a healthy culture, things like talent retention, talent attraction, engagement, et cetera. So one way we measure it very consistently is employee NPS or eNPS. It's the internal analog of consumer net promoter score, roughly how many of your people basically would recommend the company to others. And it's a very strong predictor of associate engagement or future retention. So we measure that quarterly across the workforce. And the importance of measuring with frequency, quarterly instead of say annually, is that it allows you to be agile. So you take a quick measurement, read the results, adjust yourself, read, adjust, read, adjust. So that is core. I think the second thing is kind of deciding upfront like what you want to measure. So how we knew we wanted to measure eNPS, among other things, is that we conducted a broad-based people strategy assessment in late 2019, early 2020, right before COVID. And we took a conjoint analysis approach. So this is the same thing that you use in marketing and in consumer analysis, where you say to your population, in our case, all of our associates, okay, associates, we've identified 18 different significant components of the associate value proposition, the reason you work here, right? And now we're going to ask you for each of those 18 to tell us which are the most important, force rank them to you. And of those, how effectively do we deliver each of those? And the results told us where to focus, just like they do with consumers. And what our associates told us is that there were 4 things more than anything else that they valued. One is total rewards. That's all their compensation and benefits. The second was career development, the opportunity to grow and learn and advance their career. The third was flexibility. That is flexibility about when, where, and how they do their work. And fourthly, what we call belonging, which is outside called diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is being in a place where I can reach my full potential, where I feel like I belong. So I mention that because what we did is we measured that, then we used that to prioritize our investments. So over the last 2 years, we have prioritized investments in those 4 areas. Then as we measure every quarter with the NPS, we get a sense of where we're doing well, where we need to do better, and where to adjust. We reran that assessment 18 months later, last August, September of 2020. And what we found is what we had hoped to find, which is where we made the biggest investments, we saw the biggest return. So we saw improvement in 14 out of 18 of those employee value proposition categories. And in the areas where we invested the most, we saw the biggest improvement, to the extent that belonging, for example, was assessed by our associates as the most effective of the value proposition components for them. And we had invested a lot in it, and it improved by 12 percentage points, which is a very significant movement. And I think why that was so exciting to us is it demonstrated that when you measure, and then when you base your actions and your investments on what you measure, and when that measurement is based on the voice of the consumer, in this case, the internal consumer, our associates, you get very large, significant quantitative business results. So those are some of the examples. I think qualitatively, part of all of those processes is like focus groups. So for example, in the building of our people strategy, after the quantitative assessment was conducted, we conducted focus groups to interpret those. We've also complemented this more regular assessing with periodic focused assessments. So we conducted a broad culture assessment with Spencer Stewart to understand more fully some of the aspects of where we have strengths in our culture and need to improve. And then also a large belonging assessment with an outside consulting firm called Canaries that specializes in analytics related to DEI, so that we could get even more granular about where we wanted to focus our efforts on belonging.
I mean, I love that. It sounds like a really holistic approach, really asking what people value, what will make them kind of do their best work and set up conditions for success, really investing in those pillars, and then asking again too, and actively listening to see where we need to kind of be agile in the strategy as well, and bringing in subject matter experts, looking at data, and really thinking about a long-term kind of strategy for success there. I want to ask too, historically, folks have felt, really hesitant to speak up about these quote unquote hidden dangers of toxic managers or department misaligned values or goals. From your perspective, how can you kind of proactively find them by empowering employees to really feel comfortable speaking up?
Excellent question, Christina. So I'll just start by saying that the primary and most effective way to achieve that outcome is to create a culture of openness that encourages frequent interactions with leaders and that's non-hierarchical and informal so that people feel comfortable. That said, the larger the organization, the more you have to scale a solution, because the more leaders you have who lead in different ways with different styles, and you can't control whatever your leader is doing. So the best way is to set up a system that allows there to be frequent reporting on that. So this is the reason why we've deployed quarterly pulsing on eNPS that has open-ended items included with it. That allows us to see not only at an organization-wide level or a functional level or business unit level, is our eNPS going up or going down and why, but it allows us then to drill down into the leader level at various levels of leadership, director, manager, et cetera. Because sometimes what you'll see from quarter to quarter is perhaps an eNPS score might be flat in a functional team. Maybe it was a score of 30 last month, and it's a 31 the next month or the next quarter. It looks like there's nothing really to pay attention to. You might find, however, when you drill down in, that one leader's scores in that function went up 10 points and another went down 10 points, and there's actually some remediation that's needed. So what I always say to everybody is frequent, easy surveying that people will adopt and you can get a high participation in will enable you then to really approach getting at problems before they become burning platforms and allow you to coach and guide and remediate problems. So I actually think that's the most important thing any organization can do, because it's about transparency, and transparency in service to creating an open culture. And if you create that environment where, look, we all just want to be great, the transparency becomes very normal. This is what we did at Gap when I was there, for example. And everyone in the system just got used to knowing, like, I'm just constantly responding to this metric the same way that you do, say, in a retail organization, looking consistently at retail sales or gross margin dollars or other key metrics. I think sometimes businesses have treated people data like engagement or eNPS or retention as somehow like confidential or top secret, but yet we'll share other business metrics broadly across an organization like revenue or earnings. And my approach has always been people matter as much as anything else in the business.
Right.
So you want to have transparency to that data, share it, and create healthy competition to be excelling at your people indicators, your people KPIs, just as you are your other KPIs. And I guess the last thing I would say is I always think in any organization, it's good to have some sort of anonymous platform for people to report things that they think are unethical or inappropriate. We use a tool called Ethics Point, for example. And I think some people struggle with this concept, like that we all would like to believe that you don't need any sort of anonymous system or tool, because we'd love to have an organization that's so open and caring that we can all just tell each other. And I aspire to that too. But the larger the organization, I believe the more you need some anonymous ways to be able to get very honest feedback on where you as an organization need to improve. And I found that having those tools, if used correctly, doesn't undermine trust and teamwork, but actually accentuates it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think trust is built in, a variety of ways, just like any other relationship. And some people might feel comfortable coming to you. Some people might feel comfortable coming to their manager using an anonymous platform as well. And where you are day one as opposed to year five is very different. And I like that term you used in terms of internal customer as well, because I do think, to your point, people are one of an organization's greatest assets. They're the ones talking to customers. They're on the front lines. They are working on the product as well. And in terms of creating space for transparency, we know that people don't only wear their hat of, their role or their employee. They are caretakers, working parents, and there's been a lot of burnout over the past couple of years. And people are really reflecting on what they want to work on 40 plus hours a week. And we've seen all of the articles around the quote unquote great resignation, the great reshuffle, the great reset as well. And I want to ask how you kind of reframed that at Neiman Marcus, especially with associate needs.
So, like everyone else, we are experiencing the historic and unprecedented labor market, where, as we've all been tracking, we have some of the lowest unemployment rates we've seen in decades and the highest rate of open jobs and resignations. Interesting though, at Neiman's, we haven't experienced the Great Resignation in the way that others have. So in a sense, you might say we've bucked the trend. So compared to our fiscal year 2019, so pre-COVID period, we've actually seen an improvement in retention between the last fiscal year and the year prior to COVID of about 20%, as opposed to a degradation in retention. And we've improved our time to hire rate, how long it takes on average to hire a person, by 32 percentage points. And that's about 22 days on average faster than we were in 2019 hiring people. And that's actually against a backdrop where, because we've been growing so much as a company, that we've filled over twice as many roles as we did in fiscal year 19, yet we're filling them more quickly. So how is that possible? It's a really interesting question. Like what resulted in that? What did we do differently? I would say, one, when we built our people strategy pre-COVID, it was based on both that internal data I described to you, as well as some thorough external trend benchmarking, so that those 4 key categories that I mentioned before of total rewards, career development, flexibility, and belonging have proven to be, post-pandemic, the top priorities across many different external surveys and studies of all candidates and employees. So flexibility, for example, which has been in the top 3 of most external studies in both talent attraction and retention value proposition, has moved in many studies up to be the #1 driver for candidates seeking jobs. And so our doubling and tripling down on that over the last few years through what we call the NMG way of working, which is our description of how we work at NMG that is completely flexible, where our corporate associates can work whenever, wherever, and however they want, as long as they achieve their goals, and where there's substantial flexibility for a number of our store associates as well to be able to flex how and where they work through our Connect platform. So, as a consequence of that investment in those four priorities, and in particularly in flexibility, what's happened for us, let's just take flexibility as an example. Because we made the decision to differentiate on being a flexible employer before COVID, now as many employers are asking their corporate employees to return to the office full time or at least part of the time, and we are not. Our NMG way of working approach is that people should work where they can be most productive and effective. That's allowed two things to happen. One, over the last 2 years, we released ourselves then from making that decision, from needing to hire only in a narrow market of Dallas Fort Worth, where our original corporate headquarters is located. Instead, the whole country is our talent marketplace to select from. Then two, more recently, because that's our approach and other employers are taking a different approach of forcing people back in the office, we're also able to have access to candidates we might not otherwise have who are looking to leave their employers who are taking away their flexibility at this point. So it's turned into a very significant differentiator. It also supports our other pillar priorities. So for example, many recent studies indicate that flexibility is even more important to women, for example, than to men, and to candidates of color. And so, since we have a very big focus also on belonging and diversity, equity, and inclusion, the choice of taking this policy position on the NMG way of working is supporting a number of different business objectives: retention, attraction, engagement, of course, flexibility, and belonging.
Yeah, flexibility is definitely here to stay, and employees are looking for organizations who really understand and support that too, where they can do their best work. And it does relate to belonging and accessibility of opportunities for folks who might have not had that as well. And I think that's important to note too.
It very much is, and I would just add it. We didn't really just focus on flexibility, of course. And one of the things in thinking about total rewards that we did is it allowed us to, by deciding we really wanted to figure out how can we put more cash in our associates' pockets during COVID, when many of them were furloughed, when they had other financial challenges as well, is we invested in a number of different solutions. So for example, we developed a partnership with PayActive, which allows people to get paycheck advances. Why that matters a lot is that there are so many people who don't have savings built up to be able to use in a crisis. And what they do is use high interest solutions like pawn shops and check cashing facilities or credit card loans. And so this was enabling our people to get money when they needed it quickly at very low cost. Similarly, we implemented a solution called NMG Discount Marketplace, where we partnered with an external marketplace platform that gave our associates access to thousands of different goods and services at a discount, where the average user, if they use that platform frequently as their primary platform, would save between $4,000 and $5,000 a year on household goods and services, which is the equivalent of a 3 to 5% annual increase for many people. So these are the kinds of things that, when you have a very clear strategic framework, you could then make specific decisions on how you invest in order to improve in that area. And then we use the numbers from our people strategy survey to be able to tell, like, are we moving the needle? So it's not just anecdotal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really great examples of meeting folks where they are and really empowering employees. And I definitely do want to touch on that belonging piece too, because I know you have a really unique role as leader of people and belonging at Neiman Marcus. But it would be definitely not Eric's responsibility to make sure that everyone at the organization feels like they belong. It's really everybody's opportunity, and have to have that ownership mentality. So I want to ask, what are the ways that you encourage and empower other leaders to practice equity-driven leadership?
Well, I do think it starts at the top. And that's why we at NMG have a very explicit leader driven ESG strategy, ESG being environmental, social governance, of which belonging is a component of the social dimension. And we have, in addition, a built out belonging strategy within the ESG strategy that's multi year. And so it starts with that, saying the organization really values this enough to have a strategy that is governed not only by an internal steering committee of executives, but then a committee on the board, our audit and ESG committee, oversee and hold us accountable for achieving results. And then we'll be publishing our first ESG report later this month that really will hold our feet to the fire, because that means going public with all of our commitments around ESG and belonging. So for example, we'll be making a public commitment about improving leadership representation by race and ethnicity over the next 4 years. So by making that public commitment, that then holds us internally accountable. Then internally, we have a whole series of strategies and tactics based on evidence-based practices, like deploying diverse candidate slate requirements, diverse hiring panel requirements, new diverse sourcing channels, et cetera, to allow us to achieve those goals. So making progress on creating an environment of belonging takes a village, not a person. And it, as I said, it always starts at the top and making it a priority. And then throughout the organization, based on the strategy, building out the very specific tactics that we'll be using to drive outcomes. And throughout our belonging strategy, we deploy what's often called bias interrupters. So that's a specific set of evidence-based practices that have been proven in other workplaces to disrupt bias in various talent processes in particular. So sourcing of talent, selection and hiring of talent, performance management, succession management, et cetera, pay, et cetera. And so our belonging strategy touches on all of those and deploys those various strategies. And for any of your listeners who are interested in learning more about bias interrupters, I would direct them to the originator of the concept, Joan C. Williams, from the Center for Work-Life Law at the University of California, Hastings. And she has an excellent book called Bias Interrupted, released November of 2021. That is a little bit like a playbook of different techniques organizations can use to interrupt bias in their talent management processes.
Yeah, I love that. We can put that resource in the show notes as well. And I'm glad that you brought up bias. And it sounds like this is something that you and the team are focused on 365 days a year, which is really important. And this week we celebrated International Women's Day, and the theme was breaking the bias. And we are in March 2022, which is Women's History Month as well. How are you celebrating Women's History Month and breaking the bias and supporting gender equity at Neiman Marcus?
Wow, so many ways. And this is particularly significant for us because we are one of the only large corporations in America founded in the early 20th century by women. And we are one of the only large corporations in America that is majority female, top to bottom, from the board to the C-suite to the executives, the directors, managers, individual contributors. So that means a lot to us to be differentiated as a destination for women to build a powerful career. And we draw on the legacy of our founder, Carrie Marcus Neiman, often to do that. So we are actually featuring her in a number of features this month. There's recently been a book published in the last couple of months by her great niece about her life, and a number of exhibits and other things related to her. Significantly, we are also in the process of holding ourselves accountable to the Bloomberg GEI standard on gender equality, which is a very high bar that's really only for public companies, but we're actually choosing to engage in the process as a private company
Love
in
it.
order to hold ourselves to the same standards of transparency as public companies. And I think what people will see in our ESG report later this month is that we are making disclosures that are identical to those made by public companies. So I think we're very excited about that. And then I think we're excited about the many events we're hosting throughout the month to be an advocate. So one of the things that I believe and have practiced throughout my career is that achieving belonging in an organization is a journey, not a destination. You're never done with it. It's something you're always going to be striving for. And when you are a leader in a certain area, as we are around gender equality, we can absolutely say statistically that we don't have a glass ceiling in Neiman Marcus Group for women. So when you're in that position, then what do you do? Do you just stop, or what do you do? And I always believe you use the power of your brand and your influence to advocate for and support change and role model change for others. So we have a number of external speaking engagements planned, media engagements, et cetera, in order to tell our story and hopefully thereby inspire others to follow in some of the things that we've undertaken.
Absolutely. Brands have an opportunity to make a difference in the community. Neiman Marcus is a really large brand as well that people are familiar with. So setting that standard, really leaning into transparency as well. And again, accountability keeps coming up in our conversation. Eric, is there anything that you would say is a must-have that people leaders need to incorporate in their strategy to be successful in the future? Of course, knowing what we know now, we don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, I think, Christina, it's probably a couple of very simple things. I think one, it's to have a strategy and to treat that strategy the way that your organization treats its customer experience strategy. So employee experience, when done well, is very much drafted on many of the techniques of customer experience. And one of those is start with a strategy, understand who your customer, in our case, the employee is. We did that through an extensive conjoint analysis where we asked our people what mattered most to them and how good a job we were doing at delivering that to them, then built our strategy based on it. And then secondly, measure, right? So build the strategy, set up a frequent measurement mechanism, as in our case, ENPS, to tell you consistently along the way, am I on the right track? So I view it a little bit like a GPS, that what you want to have happen is you set a goal for yourself. I'm going to improve, for example, on an aspect of belonging. And then I'm going to test, am I tracking towards that goal, or do I need to recalibrate? Did I take a wrong turn somewhere and it's not really working out? That's very much how I think about it. And then I think thirdly, it's a way to tell your story. This is communications and marketing. There's a reason why you market to consumers. And part of it is you want to help them know and understand the what's available to them in the customer value proposition, the attributes of your product or service. The same thing with your people. I've been in situations before where I was frustrated because we had so many amazing services and products for our employees at the organization I was with, but the employees didn't seem to recognize it. And at times when I dug into it, what I found was half of them didn't know we even had it. Like I would test and find there was low awareness. In one particular case, we had a really high quality childcare option available to associates, and over half of them didn't even know we had it, for example. So that's why I would say the third thing is, so it's to have a strategy based similar to customer engagement measure, and then market, make sure your people know what's available to them. And a lot of that means these days, sometimes at a relatively low cost, being able to figure out how to personalize the many offerings you have to people, sometimes using AI or other tools so that people can sort through all the noise of everything, all the communications they get, and figure out at a given point in their life what's for them. So, we're doing that, for example, with respect to a number of employee benefits offerings where we're leveraging our benefits communications platform provider to use some advanced AI they've developed to help employees know when they have a certain need, what's available to them. So, for example, if an associate perhaps is expecting a baby, the AI can help us support us with making sure that she knows about all of the benefits that are available to her to help support her at that time, and she's not just having to dig through everything and find it herself. So those are the three things I think are most important.
Yeah, I think that is important, especially the piece about marketing, all of the benefits you have, making sure people have that awareness, and especially in times when those benefits would be really beneficial as well. Eric, we have discussed a lot in terms of, Neiman Marcus's strategy and breaking the bias, accountability, belonging, and creating a really great company culture. Is there perhaps anything that I didn't ask that you want to share with folks who are listening, or underscoring 1 to 2 key takeaways you hope people bring with them?
I guess I'd close with this. I feel like I've been doing this work for 30 years, and I can't think of a time where we were more blessed with an abundance of tools and resources at our fingertips to be able to drive associate engagement. And you don't need millions of dollars to access them. There's so much available just by Googling. And I think, secondly, and really importantly, as we touched on earlier, I think the most important thing any of us can do who care about people in an organization is to regard our people strategy with the same focus, rigor, and commitment with which we treat our customer strategy. And a piece of advice I might offer for those interested would be to really get to know your people, like your head of marketing, head of consumer analytics, and others who are really focused on on your customer strategy and how you engage your customers and how you make them aware of what you have to offer and how you assess how you're doing against meeting their needs. Because what I have found is that often you can leverage tools they've already invested in. And so, for example, our marketing team uses an analytics tool to survey customers and analyze the data called Qualtrics. And it's a tool we couldn't have afforded on our own to buy in people services, but we're able to leverage that tool internally with our associates the way that they use it externally with customers. And therefore, the quality of the analytics we're able to achieve with regard to our associates is consistent with that which we get for our customers. So I would say it can benefit one to make friends with your chief marketing officer and team.
There you go. Knowledge share and share best practices and really collaborate there as well. And I agree in terms of, making sure that you are engaging your folks. There are so many resources and tools, and just starting now is important, iterating and asking for feedback. Eric, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
You're welcome, Christina. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in that employee feedback management as a requirement for the organization to succeed overall. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.